Hi, this is George Reed's video application answering the second question of the graduate scheme process. And that is to identify an organisation facing a reputational issue that has led to a negative media coverage and political interest. And in this short video, I'm going to explain how I would personally advise the organisation's leadership on how they're going to deal with the immediate challenge, and also give a more long-term insight into how this organisation can improve. And the case study that I want to talk about is that of UUK, Universities UK, who have been involved quite recently over March and February in a pension dispute with the lecturers union UCU, and it was a very, very difficult dispute which resulted in 2 weeks worth of strikes across the country, affecting thousands and thousands of students across predominantly pre-92 universities. So in terms of the background to the issue, UUK put out proposals to change the USS, University Superannuation Scheme, pension scheme, from a defined benefit scheme where lecturers were promised a certain amount to a defined contribution scheme which was reflective of investment performances in terms of the amount of pension that a lecturer would get upon retirement. This transition was taken very badly by the UCU, which is the official union representing lecturers, and there was a sense that that UUK were insensitive because they didn't understand the issues around removing these pensions, ineffective because they were unable to properly consult with lecturers during this sort of changing time, and ineffective in terms of measuring the real impact that this would have, but also inaccurate, totally overestimating the deficit that the original pension scheme that USS was in. So in those ways, the Universities UK looked as if they were not doing the job that they're supposed to do, which is to represent universities to the key main stakeholders in society. And those stakeholders are the executives of universities, but also workers at universities, professional staff and lecturers. And of course they have a responsibility to students as well, to make students feel that universities is doing the best they can for the higher education system. And they're also responsible in terms of being a stakeholder to the general public and making the general public aware of the public good of universities. So in terms of the short-term strategic communication plan, it was really important, firstly, that UUK were able to win the argument in terms of the issues around the current iteration of the pension scheme. So UCU were very clear in how they felt about the pension scheme, that there was an overly prudent analysis in terms of the deficit. But UUK should have been strong in their communications in letting the general public and students know that there was an urgent problem in terms of the size of the deficit, that it was one of the biggest in the country in terms of a defined benefit pension system, and they should have been very clear about that. The UUK should have also conducted a lot more media interviews, and Alistair Jarvis, who's the CEO of Universities UK, should have been a more public figure during that process and all of the aggression, and should have really matched up against Sally Hunt, who was the leader of the UCU at the time. And UUK should have also publicly expressed its areas of compromise in order to come across as reasonable in terms of the UCU dispute. They should have, for example, I think, said that they were willing to a re-evaluation of the scheme. If they were so confident in their original evaluation, then that wouldn't have been too much to give up, but it would have come across to the general public, to students and to key stakeholders that UUK were willing to compromise. But also, it's important to balance it with the long-term communication strategy. And it really shone a light on how people felt about UUK and its worth within the higher education sector. And the answer to that question is that they didn't feel that there was much worth in UUK, and that it was only to really preserve the interests of those at the executive level of the university. So what do they need to do? Well, there needs to be a long-term strategy. Firstly, in terms of taking real responsibility for universities and their public good and making the general public aware of that. The UUK should also do a huge research into how students feel about them and students feel about the efficiency of the UUK, seeing as I believe that most students don't really know what the UUK do. And also important for UUK to focus on the things that universities do agree on, like things like Brexit, for example, which is a very, very unpopular concept amongst many universities. So how would that be evaluated? How would we evaluate the success of this new media strategy and this new communication strategy? Well, we'd want to retain 100% of the universities that were affiliated to Universities UK in the first place. We'd also want to do a public perception survey, taken now and then taken in 18 months' time, and check the progress between how Universities UK were perceived right after the industrial action and how they're perceived in the long term after that. And we'd also want to see an increase in the social media reach, because that was one of the real areas that Universities UK fell down in terms of their communications in the short term during the strike action. So there would very much be a balanced approach to Universities UK in terms of their communication strategy. In the short term, managing perceptions, managing reputations, and really making it clear to the general public how much of an issue the pension system is. But in the long term, really ingraining amongst key stakeholders the importance of a regulatory university body, and really making people aware of the great work that universities do in terms of their research and public good.